Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's talk about the rise of the Macedonia and the conquest of Alexander. And I will be your speaker for today. I am Jodilyn E. Mataas. And for our learning objectives, at the end of the discussion, the students should be able to discover how the Macedonia rise, know the conquest of the Alexander the Great, and to recognize the legacy of Alexander. So the map is showing the Republic of Macedonia, a landlocked country in southeastern Europe, north of Greece, and south of Serbia and Kosovo. Other countries with international borders to the Republic of Macedonia are Albania in west, and Bulgaria in east. Macedonia occupies an area of 25,713 kilometers. Compared, it is about the size of Switzerland, or slightly larger than the US state of Vermont. Macedonia's landscape is mountainous with deep basins and valleys. It is bisected from northwest to southeast by the Vardar River, the country's major river, and also its highest point is Golem Karam, with 2,764 meters, the highest mountain in both countries, the Republic of Macedonia and Albania. So, Macedon was an ancient kingdom located in the north of the Greek peninsula, first inhabited by the Macedoid tribe, who, according to Herodotus, were the first to call themselves Hellenistic, and who gave the land their name. The kingdom was founded 7th century before Christ era by Caronas, who seem as semi-mythical and named after the god Macedon, also given Macinus or Macedon, a son of Zeus. So while the Greek city-states continuing to fight each other to the north, and ultimately powerful kingdom must emerge in its own right, and it's in its own people, the Macedonians. So what is Macedonian before it rise? So the attitude of the city-states Greeks to the sub-Homeric enclave was one of the genial and sophisticated contempt. They regarded Macedonians in general as semi-savages, uncouth of speech and dialect, retrograde in their political institutions, negligible as fighters, and habitual oath breakers who dressed in beer pelts and were much given to deep and Swedish potations, tempered with bouts and assassination and incest. But all of this changed under the rule of King Philip II. So King Philip II, by name Philip of Macedon, the 18th king of Macedonia. So just like what I've said earlier, all of those change under the rule of King Philip, who systematically brought the southern Greek city-states under his control. So after Philip's assassination in 336, before Christ era, his throne passed to his son Alexander the Great, who would spread Greek culture and civilization across the known world of the antiquity. So, who is King Philip II? And no, what is King Philip II contributed to the Macedonia, or what is his contribution to the Macedonia? So, he's the one who restored internal peace to his country, and by 339 had gained the domination over all of Greece by military and diplomatic means, thus laying the foundations for its expansion under his son Alexander III the Great. He initially promoted peace with his neighbors, using the time gained thereby to build his forces and introducing innovations in arms, tactics, and trainings, and stabilizing his western frontier. So his movements on the eastern frontier provoked the Greeks into forming a coalition against him. Next one is Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great, or Alexander III of Macedon, was the son of King Philip II of Macedon, who became king upon his father's death in 336 BCE, and then conquered most of the known world of his day. And he also referred to us as the Great for his military prowess as well as his diplomatic abilities in dealing with the varied populations of the territories he conquered. And he who overthrew the Persian Empire carried Macedonian arms to India and laid the foundation for the Hellenistic world of territorial kingdoms. Already in his lifetime, the subject of fabulous stories, he later became the hero of a full-scale legend bearing only the sketchiest resemblance to his historical career. Now, so this is the chronology of the rise of the Macedonia and the conquest of Alexander. Later, we will discuss this one by one. First is the reign of King Philip II. Next is the Battle of Chaeronea, wherein King Philip II conquers the Greece. And then third one is the reign of Alexander the Great. Fourth is Alexander invades Asia, or the Battle of Granicus. Fifth one is Battle of Issus. Sixth is Battle of Gaugamela, and then the fall of Persepolis, the Persian capital. And then the Alexander enters India, and then the Battle of Hydaspes and River, and then death of Alexander. So, who is King Philip II of Macedon? First one is the reign from 359 BCE to 336 BCE. Is known as the father of Alexander the Great, accomplished king and military commander in his own right. Gained domination over all by Greece by military and diplomatic means, and was the king of the ancient kingdom of Macedonia until his death. So although King Philip II only often only remembered by being father of Alexander the Great, he is also was an accomplished king and military commander in his own right, setting the stage for his son's victory over Darius III and the conquest of Persia. Philip inherited a weak backward country with an ineffective, undisciplined army, and molded them into formidable, efficient military force, eventually subduing the territories around Macedonia, as well as subjugating most of Greece. He used bribery, warfare, and threats to secure his kingdom. However, without his insight and determination, history would never have heard of Alexander the Great. So this is the map. This is the map, or the Macedonia under Philip II. So we have here the city, the Macedonian garrison, the important battles, the Kingdom of Macedonia, the dependent territories, the Kingdom of Molossians. We have here the Persian Empire. So this is, so next is the Battle of Chaeronea. So the Battle of Chaeronea took place in 338 BCE on an early August morning outside the town of Chaeronea. Although for centuries the cities of Athens and Sparta dominated this politically, militarily, and economically, the Battle of Chaeronea, one of the most renowned of all Greek battles, only involved one of the cities. Athens combined forces with Thebes to meet the rising power of Macedon in a fight that would change the history. So the victory, partly credited to Philip's young son Alexander the Great, gave Macedonia a foothold in Greece and represented a start toward Alexander's eventual empire. So this is the map during the Battle of Chaeronea. So this one is the road, and then Philip's primary movements, and then Macedonian position, as well as the Athenian position. And then this is the Philip's secondary movement. So in the map, we can actually determine how ready the Macedonian forces are. So next one is reign of Alexander the Great. So this is a map um, showing the route that Alexander the Great took to conquer the Egypt, Mesopotamia, and then Persia and Bactria. So first is Alexander invades Asia, Battle of Granicus River. So the Battle of Granicus in May 334 before Christ era was Alexander the Great's first major victory against the forces of the Achaemenid Empire. Alexander had crossed the Hellespont with his combined Macedonian and Greek forces and stepped upon the shores of Anatolia. His goal was simple: to defeat Darius III and conquer the vast Persian Empire in May 334 before Christ era. He had his first opportunity when he faced the Persians on the banks of the river Granicus. And after this victory against his satraps, he would meet Darius in battle twice at the Battle of Issus and then at the Battle of Gaugamela. So this is a map during the Battle of the Granicus. So upon arriving on the opposite bank of the river, the fight turned to a hand-to-hand confrontation. Although suffering a number of casualties, Alexander began to gain the advantage and many of the Persians began to retreat. Throughout the battle, however, the Greek mercenary infantry remained in its position and did not move. So, one unique and problematic situation for the Persians was the positioning of their cavalry on the banks of the Granicus. The Greek mercenary infantry, 5,000 strong, was placed behind them. Some historians believe this idea cost the Persians the battle. The Persian cavalry could neither move forward because of the river banks nor pull back because of the location of the infantry. In addition, the one weapon unique to the Persians, the chariot, was almost useless in the muddy river bank. Was this a tactical error or a pure arrogance? So together with the lack of true leadership besides Memnon, the battle was lost before it was begun. So next one is the Battle of Issus. So in the Battle of Issus on November 5, 333 BCE, was Alexander the Great's second battle against the Persians army and the first direct engagement with King Darius III near the village of Issus in southern modern-day Turkey. It was a major victory for Alexander, defeating the Achaemenid Empire for causing Darius III to flee the battlefield. Unfortunately for Darius, he had ignored the advice of Charidamus, one of his trusted Greek generals, who had told Darius to divide his forces and allow him to fight alone against Alexander. But Darius ignored this suggestion for what some see as a matter of ego and prestige. He could not lose to this young Greek upstart. So after being ignored, Charidamus made the mistake for a few ill-chosen comments about Persians. Darius, who spoke Greek and perfectly understood the comments, was offended and immediately had his general executed, something many consider as unwise because Charidamus was viewed as one of the Darius' most capable generals. So from the battle did not go well for Darius. Despite the advantage of numbers, he had all his men were soon on the offensive and able to maneuver as they would have the light. So Darius' left flank was hampered by the river valleys, mountainous on his left and the sea on his right. So the Battle of Gaugamela. So as in every battle, Alexander and his companion cavalry took position in the right flank while Parmenio, as usual, held at the left flank. Stationed in the middle were the well-trained Macedonian phalanx with more light infantry and archers on either side. Alexander also did something different. He chose to place infantry at angles on the ends of both the right and left flanks to protect against a possible flanking maneuver by wait, um where to to protect against a possible flanking maneuver by the Persians. He also placed additional Greek infantry to the rear and of the center. So while Alexander was challenging the Persians on the right, Darius sent chariots towards the Macedonian center, a move that failed to have the effect Darius had hoped. As the chariots approached, the phalanx merely opened ranks, allowing the chariots to pass through. So the Persians were immediately set upon by the infantry and hand-to-hand combat. Soon followed, back on the right, Alexander spying Darius seized upon the opportunity and um, throw a spear at the shocked king. So just like at Issus, Darius realized that the victory was hopeless and fled. So next one is the fall of Persepolis, the Persian capital. So after his victory over Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 before Christ era, Alexander the Great marched on the city of Susa, which surrendered without resistance. After leaving Susa for Persepolis, he received a letter from Tiridates, satrap of Persepolis, telling him that Persians loyal to Darius III were en route to Persepolis to fortify it against him, and if he should arrive first, Tiridates would surrender the city to him. But if not, he would have to fight for it. Alexander ordered his men on a forced march, crossed the Araxes River, and were approaching the city when, according to Diodorus Siculus, they were met by a crowd of about 800 Greek artisans from Persepolis. Next one is Alexander enters India, and then the Battle of Hydaspes River. So Alexander invaded the Punjab, or land of the five rivers in India, which was ruled by a king called Porus. Alexander and his men passed over a wide river and fought a great battle against the Indians. So Alexander's soldiers were better drilled and stronger than the Indians, and Alexander horsemen charged the elephants in flank, and they stung to madness by Greek darts. Then the Indian war chariot stuck fast in mud, and Pyrrhus himself was wounded. And Alexander was gracious to Pyrrhus and treated him as one great king and warrior should treat another. As he marched through India, he fought battles, built altars, and founded cities including Bokhipala and Alexandria. So next one is the death of Alexander the Great. So Alexander returned to Babylon in 323 before Christ era with the plans for expanding his empire, but he would never realize them. He died at Babylon at the age of 32 on 10 or 11 of June 323 before Christ era after suffering 10 days of high fever. Theories concerning his cause of death have ranged from poisoning to malaria to meningitis to bacterial infection from drinking contaminated water. So after his 14 days before his death, Alexander entertained his flute admiral Narcus and his friend Medius of Larissa with a long bout of drinking, after which he fell into a fever from which he never recovered. When he was asked who should succeed him, Alexander said the strongest, which answered led to his empire being divided between the four of his generals, Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus, known as the Adachi or the successor. So this is there is a question. Was Alexander great? So the answer is many conquered lands retained the Greek influence Alexander introduced, and several cities he founded remain important cultural centers today. So the period of history from his death to when his empire folded would come to be known as the Hellenistic period from Heliazen, which means to speak Greek or to identify with the Greeks. So Alexander is great. Alexander the Great is revered as one of the most powerful and influential leaders the ancient world ever produced. So now let's talk about the world of the Hellenistic kingdom. So the Hellenistic age in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East, the period between the death of Alexander the Great in 323 before Christ era and the conquest of Egypt by Rome in 30 BCE. For some purposes, the period is extended for a further 3.5 centuries to move by Constantine the Great of his capital from the breakup of Alexander's empire. Um, there are numerous realms, including the Macedonian, the Seleucid, and Ptolemaic, that served as the framework for the spread of Greek culture, the mixture of Greek with other populations, and the fusion of Greek and Eastern elements. Next is the Hellenistic age refers to the period between the death of Alexander the Great and the rise of Roman Empire. Following its conquest of Cleopatra, Egypt, the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Ptolemy got Egypt, Seleucus received Mesopotamia and large parts of the east, and Antigonus ruled much of Asia Minor. Generals like Seleucus and Antipater took Thrace and mainland Greece, respectively. So the rise of Hellenistic period brought many changes across various continents, from Africa to Asia, as many Greeks began to explore and integrate knowledge and culture outside of their worlds. Here are some of the notable achievements from the Hellenistic era that would shape the world history. But before that, let us know first what is the meaning of Hellenization. So Hellenization describes how Greeks, along with their culture and language, occupied most of the Persian Empire following the death of Alexander the Great. In ancient Greece, the Greek word for the empire was Hellas, but long before he died, Alexander was already on a mission to spread the Greek way of life. His intentions, whether for using culture to amass more power or to enlarge his ego, were wildly successful. So, the birth of the Hellenistic kingdoms, after over 30 years of fighting, only three major kingdoms remain. So, below we will discuss those three kingdoms as well as their contributions they made to the ancient world. So first one is first one the Ptolemy first Suter was the founder of Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, which ruled for almost 300 years until it ended with the reign of Queen Cleopatra in 30 BC. So Ptolemy adapted Egyptian practices such as pharaoh as their titles and wearing native attires, but still maintained their Greek culture. So the Ptolemaic dynasty remained the richest and most powerful out of all the Hellenistic kingdoms, with Alexandria becoming the go-to place for higher learning, and the lighthouse of Alexandria becoming the greatest commercial hub in the ancient world. However, due to internal and external conflict, the empire started to and declined steadily due to internal and external conflicts. So during the reign of Cleopatra, the kingdom attempted to secure its relevance by allying with the growing Roman Empire, but her activities were unsuccessful and Egypt fell under Roman rule in 30 BC. Next one is Seleucid Empire. Yes. Um, at its height, the Seleucid Empire covered territories from Asia Minor, present-day Turkey, to the eastern Mediterranean coast. Some Seleucid rulers even stretched the empire all the way to Himalayas. Having served as an important position for trade for many centuries, the Seleucid Empire was overcome by the Roman Republic and Parthian Empire in the late second and early first centuries. So this is the image of the Seleucid Empire. The light blue. No. So the Seleucid built many cities, including its capital, Seleucia, named after Alexander General Seleucus. But ruling the Seleucid Empire was extremely challenging. Although it was prosperous, its vastness made it difficult to rule because there were fewer Greeks in this empire. But this small Greek population also helped make it the empire with the most diverse population. Next one, the Antigonids. So the Antigonids maintained control over Greece and made Macedon its capital. It was also the only empire to have been established twice. First by Antigonus Monophthalmus, who controlled Asia Minor. During the Battle of the Generals, after they scrambled for territories, Antigonus first died in the Battle of Ephesus. His death weakened the first empire, but it survived and later established back in Greece. So, the geography of the Hellenistic world is this one. The purple one, which is the Macedon, and then or the Antagonite Empire, and then this one is the Ptolemaic Empire, the green one, and then the Seleucid Empire, this one. So the Hellenistic trade routes. So agriculture was still a primary importance to both the native populations and the new Greek cities of the Hellenistic world. Indeed, trading context linked much of the Hellenistic world. Hellenic culture was kept alive and spread all across the known world, often with the sword, but even more successfully through trade. So, the Ptolemaic influence extended from Carthage in the Alexandria in Egypt to Menor in Nubia. Ptolemaic trade routes extended as far south as Abyssinia and Somaliland in Africa, as well as to India by sea trade. So the Seleucid influence extended from Antioch in the west via Seleucia in Babylonia and Persepolis in Persia to Bactria, the gateway to the Asian steppes and to Xi'an in China. Along the Silk Road, by these routes, Greek culture was exported, and exotic goods such as elephants, ivory, pearls, and silk were imported into Mediterranean. Next one is the new opportunities for women allowed the women were allowed to pursue education in the traditional fields of the athletics, sports, and just like that. So from the ancient Greece to the traditions of Hellenistic society, gender stereotypes have been considered as one of the main characteristics present within this civilization. Most significantly for Hellenistic society, it was the rule of patriarchs that best described their gender orientation in the society. New possibilities for females arose when women in some areas were allowed to pursue education in the traditional fields on literature, music, and even athletics. So in the Hellenistic period, women began to matter much more than they had during the classical period. For a select few well-born women, such as queens, princesses, and benefactresses, um, they had they had the potential to become as wealthy and influential as the most important men of their time. However, it is difficult to quantify the role of women in kingship and society, as they were rarely allowed to become the legal owners of property, and any financial transaction they took part in had to be supervised by a male relative acting as guardian. Athenian legislation shows that a marriage was a contract between the bride's father and her husband, with a dowry as a conditional gift to ensure the well-being of the women. So Scabs one argues that a woman with larger dowry had de facto control over her husband due to the possibility of having to pay back the dowry if she decided to divorce him. Next one is the political institutions. So the Macedonians could be united by powerful leaders, but their nobility tended to be selfish and jealous of power. Since he named no higher, Alexander almost guaranteed that his empire would collapse as his generals turned on each other. Indeed, within a year of his death, um, the empire plunged into civil war. It took until 280 before Christ era for the fighting to cease and three major kingdoms to be established, founded by the general Antigonus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. So this next guy. So next one is the philosophy. Philosophers in the Hellenistic Empire deduced various ways to manipulate the people's issues in relation to the kingdoms and individual problem of the world. So we have here the Stoicism, Epicureanism, Skepticism, and Cynicism. Let's discuss this one by one. So when we say Stoicism, um, Stoicism is a Hellenistic philosophy that was preserved in both the Roman and Greek ancient times. The ideology was put forward by Stoic, a philosopher who believed that human virtue plays a vital role in promoting an effective existence. The academic argued that every individual could achieve harmony if they focus on mastering their urges via motives. So the idea is also encourage people to involve in public life to influence peaceful well-being among the societies. Next is skepticism. The skepticism philosophy held that there are several ways to attain happiness in society. The approach induces doubts and distrust among people, thus eager to find more about the causes of personal fulfillment. It encouraged individuals to focus major on morality and the limits of reasoning. The idea discouraged learning on fixed principles of the community but embraced the practical experience to enhance an enjoyable lifestyle. Next is Epicureanism. Epicureanism. This system of philosophy is based on the Greek teachings of the philosopher Epicurus. The idea was formulated around 307 BC to discard the determination perception and promote hedonism. So according to ideology of Epicurus, the main goal of life is to achieve pleasure. He proposed that for individuals to have a pleasurable living, they have to cultivate and embrace the culture of honesty and be wise throughout. Generally, Epicureanism suggests that to attain happiness, individuals should not involved in public life. It also adds that by freeing oneself from all forms of society, people can be delighted. The opinion is inclusive for all gender and practicing the reasons facilitates personal contentment. So the last one is Zionism. So during the Hellenistic age, a philosopher called Cynics based his arguments on the Diogenes ideology to support the fact that self-sufficiency is vital to the well-being of the people. So according to the academic, Cynic believed that and taught people that what matters to individuals is the realization of oneself through discovering natural endowments. He dismissed nationality and social status as factors that guarantee a person's peace. So the philosophy aimed at freeing humans and encouraging them to focus on their nature while refusing any kind of power. In the process, he called for the enhancement of moral values to enable the achievement of personal fulfillment. So, and that's all for my report. And I hope you learned, and thank you for listening.